Recently, Spektrum announced a real revolution in 2.4 gigahertz DSM technology. Up till now, they've really been kind of recommending not to use Spektrum equipment in boats for a couple different reasons. Well, now we have the MR3000 receiver, the first purpose-built marine receiver from Spektrum. With us today is Blake Good, who is the head of this project. Thanks for coming by today, Blake.
Yeah, you're welcome, Gary.
Can you give me just a real brief overview? This is really a two-piece kind of setup. You need the MR3000 receiver and you need a DX3S. What's the difference on the marine protocols versus what we've seen both on the air and the surface side?
It does use two frequencies and it's a little higher output are the main differences.
So the power output's a little bit hot? Okay, so it should give you not necessarily more range, but maybe better penetration into, like if you have a fiberglass hull or different materials in the hull, basically.
Yeah, it's actually primarily the reason we went to that is because water has like a pulling effect. It kind of acts like an absorber almost,
okay.
Or it prevents the signal from getting to the receiver.
Which is really, sounds like the main reason why we weren't recommending the older surface receivers to this point.
You know, we've tested the older receivers and some people were using them and they worked okay, but you didn't get the optimal range out of it. And so that's why we developed this system. It gives you the range that you know, people come to expect from Spektrum.
Okay, so now you do have the MR3000 here. We've got one installed in the boat, one here in a box, and we've got the receiver right here. One of the first things that people are going to notice, first, it's got two antennas. Is that basically the path diversity, like what we've seen on the air side, where it's got two antennas, why we've got it now on the marine side?
That's exactly right, Gary. They have, it has two what we call coaxial antennas, where the part of the antenna that receives the signal is the last about 31 millimeters here. So, and that does provide path diversity, which means that there are two antennas receiving the signal, and these antennas should be in different locations in the boat and at different orientations. So if something happens to, let's say the signal can't get to this antenna, well, this one should still get the signal. So it ensures that you're always receiving the signal from the transmitter.
So just like on the SR3100, I'm assuming too, you don't want to bend this or cap it or anything like that, or put any kinks in that to prevent any signal loss or perhaps even lose that side of the receiver?
Exactly.
So now this is only part of the package here. The other part is the DX3S marine code, or basically you guys have done a change in the part number too to reflect this new change. It's a SPM 3140 versus a 3130. What's all different now on this new version of the DX3S versus the original version? Really the only difference is that the 3S, the SPM 3140, now supports DSM2 surface receivers and the marine receiver. That's really the only difference. You can still bind it to DSM receivers like the SR300, the SR3000, the SR3001. Now you can also bind it to SR3100s, SR3520s, which are DSM2 receivers, and the marine receiver. Now I notice here, I mean, and we'll get a close look here on the receiver, is that we have steering, throttle auxiliary, throttle steering, bind. There's 6 total ports on here. What are the extra channels on here for?
It's still a 3-channel receiver. It's basically just got dual steering and dual throttle outputs. So that's for the guys who maybe have bigger scale boats that need need dual throttles, or they have 2 steering
rudder servos or something like that. I did notice that it said that the MR3000 is compatible also with the DX6i, the DX5e, the 12X, the 9303 that all use DSM too. But really, should you use those radios if you're using this receiver in a marine application?
Primarily we did that. It's for some of the customers who are using stick radios with their maybe a sailboat, or someone who just prefers a stick radio can still use their stick radio with this receiver.
It's really the DX3S is compatible with this for marine uses, and then the air DSM2 based radios.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
And even if you've got the modules too on the air side.
Right. Yep. They're compatible.
Good way to go. So let's dive inside the hull. We've got a ProBoat Formula Fastech here that I've outfitted. One of the neat things that I like about this is the fact that I'm now able to mount the receiver way down in the radio box. It's not up high. It's a lot cleaner for me. I'm also not having to use a balloon to really insulate or protect the receiver from the elements.
That's right. It's the first for Spektrum. We actually have a new type of material we're using that coats and protects the circuit board, basically.
Yeah, the whole receiver just feels different. I can't explain it, but when you hold it,
it feels different. How will salt water affect this if it gets into the radio box itself and gets on the receiver?
Yeah, salt water is still very corrosive, and you still, if customers are running their boats in salt water, you still probably want to use a balloon to help protect the receiver, just because, as you can see, the pins are still exposed. So,
sure.
And then the antenna area as well. So you still want to be cautious in those situations.
Okay, so we have our receiver mounted here, and I've got one of the antennas, as you saw, I pulled right out of the antenna tube. But the other one I've got right along the inside of the hull here.
With this one up in the antenna tube, this antenna here will be vertical, and this one will be horizontal. So you have two different orientations.
What would happen if, instead of running one along the side of the hull, if I just put both straight up in the air?
The whole idea behind the leaky feeders or coaxial antennas is that you can put them in two different parts of your boat. So one in the antenna tube is great, and then one down the side of the hull. They're mounted in different spots, and like I said earlier, if the signal gets blocked to one or there's interference by some means to one, then the other antenna is going to get the signal.
What about height inside the hull for the secondary antenna? Do you want to make sure that it's above where the water would be on the hull, or does that not make a difference?
It does make a difference, and the higher up in the hull you can put it, the better.
Okay. Well, we're going to take this boat now. I've got a couple charged batteries. We're going to head out to Kaufman Lake, just right up the road, and we're going to put this to the test because, quite frankly, I'm really curious to see how this runs.
All right.
Now we're here at the lakeside. We're ready to test out the Formula Fastech. One thing we have done before we're testing it out here on the water is we did perform a range check, just to make sure that we had good path diversity and good signal between the radio and the boat. Let's hit the water. Now I'm running it right now just with two 6-cell battery packs in it. Meant to grab the LiPos. Unfortunately, I forgot those on my desk. The one thing I noticed right away using the DX3S versus the stock radio is I'm getting a little bit more throw on the rudder, so I'm able to make sharper turns. That can be a benefit and a hindrance if you're not used to a boat being that touchy. I mean, it feels just as responsive and precise as when I ran the stock radio. Connection feels absolutely rock solid here between the radio and the boat too. It's doing everything it should be doing. The one thing too that may go initially unnoticed about upgrading to the marine system is the fact that the DX3S does have a built-in timer on it, so you can set the timer to beep at you at 6 minutes, 8 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever you want to set it at, to make sure that you're not stuck out in the middle of the water if your battery packs happen to run low. Man, this thing worked absolutely great. It felt just as connected as like when I run my other gear with my DX3S.
Great, yeah, it's very impressive.
So now we've talked about how you can tell first of all the part number difference. It looks like too there's a visual difference on the back of the radio too to tell if you've got the DSM 2 or the marine code in the radio.
That's right, Gary. It's an easy way to tell if your DX3S is compatible with the new marine receiver and DSM 2 receiver.
Without having to remember part numbers or things like that.
Right. Yep, makes it easy.
Now, the other thing too is, say someone bought their DX3S a year ago, well, their radio as it is right now won't work with the marine system. What can we do for these customers to get them taken care of? Yeah,
those customers, if they want to use it with the marine receiver or DSM 2 receivers, they can send it into the service center, or they actually can contact Horizon Product Support, who will then set them up to send it into the service center, and the service center for $50 will upgrade their system so it's compatible with the marine receiver and ship it back. Customers are responsible for shipping both ways.
Okay. Well, I mean, it sounds like a cheap and economical way to go ahead and get the new latest code and everything. Now, for $50, do they get an MR3000 too?
That'd be nice, but no, unfortunately, these are sold separately.
I tried for you guys, so. All right, thanks, Blake, for coming by.
You're welcome.
Blake Good again with Spektrum. We're here with the Pro Boat Formula Fastech brushless. This thing is awesome, by the way. The new DSM 2 marine gear absolutely works flawlessly. If you do have any questions or comments over anything that you've seen here today, please feel free to email us at editors@horizonrc.com. Thanks for watching.